Hi, thank you. I haven't memorized all my poems.
I didn't memorize my poems, I know them because I made them.
I hope one day I can do that too. So I actually might have some memorized without knowing it. So we'll see what happens. Jake asked me to read poems that reference music and Judaism. And I was looking through my poems and I realized that really all poems are Jewish and all poems are music. Poetry is music without instruments because poetry is made up of sounds and rhythms. And poetry is Jewish because a poem is really a prayer.
Jewish is music.
And Jewish is music, someone just said. I am going to start with a poem that it's a memorial poem for my teacher, the teacher of my life from elementary school. He was my teacher in the 6th grade and the 8th grade. His name was Chris Ajima. He taught us, he was passionate about poetry, and he is probably the reason why I became a poet. And he was also an incredible musician. He played guitar and he sang and was a part of the Asian American music and civil rights movement in the 60s and 70s, a very powerful force. So I'm going to read a poem I wrote about him. He died last year. But first I want to tell you a little story about him so you get a sense of what he's like, and also hear about a poem that inspired this poem. When we were in the 6th grade, we were sitting in the classroom, and I don't know what class it was, English, math, or grammar, and a student left the room. Daniel Atkins had to leave the room. He was going to be gone for half an hour. I don't remember why. Daniel Atkins, 6th grader, left. And so Chris Ajima, our teacher, said to us, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to memorize Lord Byron's poem, She Walks in Beauty. And we're going to sit here for the next half an hour and memorize it. We're going to know it perfectly. And then when Daniel walks back in the room, when he reaches this spot, and he pointed to a very particular place in the room, when he reaches that place, that spot, we're all going to stand up and point to him and recite the poem. So this is what, we did these kind of things all the time with him. And it was a way for us, I guess, I wasn't thinking about it at the time, but it was a way for us to memorize poetry in wacky ways. So we spent the next half an hour memorizing this Lord Byron poem. And I don't know if you remember it, but I'll just read the first four lines. She walks in beauty like the night of cloudless climes and starry skies, and all that's best of dark and bright meet in her aspect and her eyes. So I memorize this poem. Daniel peeks in the room. I still remember his face walking in, and he gets to that spot. We all stand up. She walks in beauty like the night. We point to him, and he looks at us terrified, turns bright red, and runs out of the room. So when I wrote this poem about Chris Ajima, I somehow unconsciously, I think, was thinking of She Walks in Beauty, so you might hear some rhythms or some of the words from that poem. It's called Teacher, in memory of Chris Ajima. What am I afraid of? You have fallen down, broken flower, broken moon. We walk with your shadow like the night. Don't worry, don't worry, don't worry about being alone. You are our keeper, our grammar book, our 7 samurai, our teacher. We are your almonds, your bouncing commas, your words waiting to be done. We walk with your words to the wise folks, your anger, your unstrung guitar. Don't worry, don't worry, don't worry about living a life of your own. Broken moon, broken flower, sunburst, what am I afraid of? We are your awkward pens, you are our Spanish, our intelligence, our backpacks heavy with mercy. We are walking with your beauty, with your broken songs, walking without you like the night. I'm going to read a series of poems about Eve. I'm very interested in the life of Eve, and I don't think it's just because my name is Eve. So this first poem of mine is called The Buried Rib Cage. Eve slipped from its arced ridge, the only body part you don't do evil with. The eye, the hand might beg corruption. The ribs are modest, shy crests, ticklish, an open fan, not quite sexual, yet not Puritan. Delicate accordion, yawn, moan, soul breathes through its comb. I'm actually going to read a poem by the poet Marie Howe, and it's called Part of Eve's Discussion. It was like the moment when a bird decides not to eat from your hand and flies, just before it flies, the moment the river seems to still and stop because a storm is coming, but there is no storm, as when 100 starlings lift and bang together before they wheel and drop, very much like the moment driving on bad ice, when it occurs to you your car could spin just before it slowly begins to spin, like the moment just before you forgot what it was you were about to say. It was like that, and after that, it was still like that, only all the time. It's an incredible poem. This is, I have a little poem about Eve, which is kind of my version of that poem, kind of about, my version of what she was thinking about, that moment when everything changed for Eve. Afterward, Eve, I can't remember what this brush between my legs is for. I used to know, and the purpose of these breaths, of this tongue, this palm, it had something to do with now I want. Now I'm going to read a poem by Robert Frost, which links Eve's voice to birdsong. And the poem, it's about Adam. It's kind of Adam thinking about this idea. And it's called Never Again Would Bird Song Be the Same. Eve would declare and could, he, I have Eve on my mind. This is Adam. He would declare and could himself believe that the birds there in all the garden round, from having heard the day-long voice of Eve, had added to their own an oversound, her tone of meaning but without the words, admittedly an eloquence so soft could only have had an influence on birds when call or laughter carried it aloft. Be that as may be, she was in their song. Moreover, her voice upon their voices crossed had now persisted in the woods so long that probably it never would be lost. Never again would bird song be the same, and to do that to birds was why she came. I'm going to read one last poem. This is my poem. It's called Desire. God unpoured the wine out of Eve to create delay, the gap between wanting and the wanted. Before, with the wine pouring through her, desire for touch blazed simultaneous with touch, flame to flame. My desire lags, without speech, mute, a weight in my eyes, a whistling cavern in my knees. Your desire will be to your husband, and he will rule over you. God unpoured the wine out of Eve, and the birds began yearning. A woman desires her husband as the rain wants the earth to need it, as my transgressions hope I will seek them, as God wants me to pray. I have been told that force has no significance. No soul moves by force. What I want will not come to me just because I desire it. I have been told that I cannot force. I don't know how this will end. God unpoured the wine out of Eve. I don't know the end to this story. Thank you.